Welcome back. This is your newspaper review this morning, looking at the big stories of the day. But even as we do that and go through the dailies, we're also keeping a keen eye, of course, right across the country as KCSE examinations kick off on day one. Various containers right across the country being opened. We took a look at what was happening in Mombasa with PS Kipsang right there, making sure that the government will deliver on this particular exam, as they've said. And he also promised to carry out impromptu checks right across that particular area as examinations proceed. So we'll be giving you updates on that as and when they do happen, right here, of course, on K24 TV. Let's get back to the big stories of the day. I have Ben Mulo, Nerima Wako, and Mark Bichachi. We're looking at the Standard's front page that's talking about a man who messed up a whole country. But even as we talk about the fact that he had a huge appetite in terms of taking loans and debt as far as CS is concerned, we're looking at a view where we still have that situation, even if we have a different acting CS. Don't ratify debt cap review, Senate told. At this particular point in time, we have a situation where the government wants to borrow 9 trillion, from the 6 trillion that is right now, and move it from pegging it to the GDP to an absolute figure right there. When do we say no and just cut our cloth according to what we need?
The issue, Jeff, is not really a matter of debt. What Kenyans are complaining about is, one, what is the debt used for? Are we getting value for money? And then number two, what is the corruption index of this country? We cannot say, report year after year that a third of our budget is unaccountable for, that a third of our budget is wasted, and then we want to borrow that same third every year. And that's really where the tug of war is. If the government wants to proceed with their 9 trillion, let them also make sure that there's no wastage in government. And I can tell you for free, there's a lot of wastage. If you check how we procure airline tickets, an airline ticket can move from 100,000 shillings to 500,000 shillings in government. A bed trolley for hospitals, as reported on Friday, can move from 15,000 shillings to a whooping 2 million shillings least. A light bulb from 1,500 shillings all the way to 1 million shillings. And by the way, all that is legal because it was legally tendered for. It is government wastage that people are complaining about, which is something, again, that CS Rotich supervised for 6 years to continue to happen. What we need to support the acting CS on is to return to zero budgeting. We need to return to zero budgeting. We need to go back and ask ourselves, are we getting value for money? And that's what we need to do as soon as yesterday, before we go on borrowing. So before Kenya borrows another cent, what we need to ask ourselves is, are we getting value for money for what we already receive? Look at even the cost of building our infrastructure. It's become ridiculous. Thanks to the former National Land Commission, land would be at 10 million today. The next day it's $1 billion, simply because a road or Ketraco is building something there. Those are the things that we need to address. We can't, in fact, my opinion is this. We should go back to the idea that all land is state-owned, and when they show up to my land and they want to build a road, they pay me whatever they want. Because at this rate, if you come to my land, Uko, the middle of Syokimau, end of the road, in Ito Mishualami, literally, when I buy it, it's 300,000. When the government wants to come and build there, it's 30 million. Those are the issues that we need to address. Look at. Yeah.
Nerima, some people are saying, okay, fine, you need to just pump the brakes as far as our appetite for debt is concerned and look at the state of the economy right now. Is it more money that we need, or look at the fact that companies are closing shop, layoffs are happening, and start dealing with that and not looking abroad and domestically for more money, and really can't see where this money is being used at a government level?
Pump the brakes, because right now all I'm receiving is messages in my DM from people who are unemployed. And I'm not even in government. I'm not. And we even, we had an application go out for just an admin position, and I received almost 600 applications. And so when you think about larger companies that now receives them in the thousands to 10,000s, that is worrying. And even for that matter, I'm now receiving messages of people talking about how to survive the next 3 years in Kenya, including don't borrow. I just received a WhatsApp message, don't take loans if you don't need to, reduce on school fees, look for schools that you can afford in terms of even having basic commodities, because we're not even talking about the price of unga. and people not being able to meet that price. And I even talked about last week how we're coming to the holidays in December, and we're going to see more and more families not going to travel to their rural areas to even celebrate. And we need to pump the brakes on that, because when you combine that kind of economic factor and the essence of the majority age used to be 19, because with this census, it's probably going to be 15 or lower. It's going to be young. And we're talking about the majority age, which is the working population, and not having employment. Those are the questions that we need to be answering right now, not necessarily the borrowing, not necessarily what we're going to do with it in terms of building infrastructure. It's about how people are getting access to their basic needs. Right. And even when we talk about it, for me, taxes is grueling. I pay as a good citizen of this country, but every month that I do, it is grueling, because you realize that you do not see where those taxes go. Right. You're even concerned about how they're taking 30% of your income tax. And even before you get to see it, the later day, you don't see where it goes in front of you, even access to public health and things like that, which should be basic.
Right. Ben, it almost feels like, from what the government says, it's in a catch-22 situation right now, because even as a citizen say, okay, fine, stop this appetite for debt, let's use what we have, the government is saying we're broke. We've seen them reducing judiciary budgets. We've seen them putting austerity measures right across the board, saying that we don't have money. We need to find a way to make this work. Yes. Where do they go from here? If really the Treasury doesn't have any money, they have to find a way to survive until the end of their term, so to speak.
Well, that is one fact. They have somehow to survive. But at what cost? You see, what we have, we started digging a long time ago. And when people were raising concerns, they were being dismissed as if they do not understand what they were talking about. Now, even if we borrow, what are we borrowing for? To pay salaries and to pay, to pay government rents and to maintain the public service. What impact will the money, even if we borrow today a trillion shillings, what are we injecting that into so that it can begin to generate money immediately? Because as we see, we started talking about foreclosures, for example. Up to now, the government has not met its end of the bargain to be able to pay suppliers of services and goods and contractors to government for almost 5 years now. These are the same people that now KRA, and you read about the pressure that KRA currently is on. Where we are now is this cow was long milked dry. And the money that was meant to buy hay was spent on buying wheat flour, which we cooked chapati and we ate. So there's no miracle that you can do to manufacture milk inside this particular cow. It is going to be a very long, painful process. One of the key things, as you have continued to see, is we are going to continue witnessing massive layoffs, especially by corporations and even by the government itself, whereby it is what they call right-sizing. Secondly, we are going to witness massive readjustments, even at the household level, in terms of household expenditure. So all these combinations actually are not any indicator, because even if we borrowed a trillion shillings, you know, the government is not an enterprise, it's not a business. You see, like today I can invest a billion shillings into this media house, and maybe I want to open a branch in Kakamega and Kisumu and Mombasa, all that. And suddenly now we have revenue coming in. If for government, for public accounting, it doesn't work like that. This money, even if we borrow, we are not going to start growing wheat to sell by next year so that we can earn money. So it is going to be a terrible process for every Kenyan. Right. And believe you me, sometime last year I remember having a conversation with people, and they were starting to complain that things are hard. And I told them, you haven't seen nothing yet. I only want to be fair to Kenyans. You haven't seen nothing yet. The reality now is coming. Actually, these are just pleasantries of indicators of what is coming. And even if the government borrows even the 3 trillion shillings, they intend to raise the ceiling from 6 to 9 trillion. The ultimate impact to have that an effect on the population is not going to take a minimum of less than 3 years.
So to get ourselves out of the situation that we are in, let's give it 36 months or so.
Minimum. Because there are critical sectors that are completely crippled. But Treasury can embark on a genuine and a practical economic stimulus program, like what we had it was 2011. No, after the 2007-2008 post-election violence. And that particular time, actually, the president was the cabinet, there was the minister for finance. And that actually managed to kickstart a lot of people. You have seen that our exports, agriculture now is dwindling. We have seen that we have lost our sheen. We have lost our markets for floriculture exports to Europe. Ethiopia is taking over. We have lost agriculture. Now we are even importing milk and sugar and basics from our neighbors. Yet these are things that used to drive this economy. So unless we have a practical economic stimulus program that injects life into these industries, there is no miracle that Ukuru Yatan can do at the Treasury. And
of course, wait and see what are the Senate decides, of course, and whether they do go ahead and ratify that particular extension.
I agree with them. We should refuse the increase of the ceiling.
We'll wait and see what happens on the floor of the House right there. But right now, we'll have to switch gears, look at matters politics. It's on the front pages of various papers right now. The battle royale as Ruto Raila show their force. On the Star's front page, YDP, Ruto and Raila are desperate for Kibra win. Victory for Ruto will boost his marketability outside his traditional strongholds. Let me come to you on this, because look at the front pages and you can see this last leg as far as the campaigns were concerned. Respective sides held nothing back in terms of what they were bringing to the table. Why is this seat so important? Because when you think about it, it's a by-election. Yet you have everything, nothing held back from each of the parties right now. What's at stake?
It's heated because of the political situation that we're in at the moment. Everyone is viewing it as 2022 and the battle between Raila and Ruto. So it's not necessarily the by-election that's happening in Kibra. And I believe after last week's show, a lot of the comments that came back from people was that, oh, ODM has it, ODM has Kibra. But a lot of people who are responding back were saying, if ODM has Kibra, then they wouldn't be
showing
this nervous, because they are showing it, the fact that they are going door to door, and the fact that they have even governors who are assisting in this campaign, the fact that they even have big wigs who are coming and taking their time and engaging with the community, and they've rarely done any media interviews. And they've not done media interviews because they're saying that their voters, it's more important for them to meet them face to face rather than impersonal in front of a television screen. So what we're seeing here is both sides saying that 2022 is going to be different. One side is saying that we still have it, we still have the amount of support that we need, and the fact that Kibra is viewed as Raila's backyard, and we have Ruto saying that you might not have as much power as you think that you have had, and I'm here to show you that things are different. Vitu kwa ground ni different.
True. And
so we'll see.
Talking about things being different, that really is indeed what we're talking about right now. When you look at the picture and the rallies that were done yesterday as they concluded, we look at the Ruto camp, of course, you can see right there Kimani Ichung'wah, you can see Jaguar right there, Charles and Jaguar, and of course the Jubilee candidate right there, McDonald Mariga, with the DP. The Raila camp, however, some interesting faces and lots of speculation being asked as to what's going on. We had Governor Mutua right there, Governor Ngilu. We had Anne Waiguru, Governor as well right there, Maina Commander as well. And these are people who actually should be in this other camp and in this other picture. Let's talk about Jubilee. When all you can see your members rightly going out and supporting an opposing candidate, who should say anything about this? Because surely the party leader should question or ask the Secretary General what is going on within the party. This is madness, Mark.
I don't think he needs to ask, because I think I said on this show last week that there's Jubilee and Jubilee B.
Isn't it his duty to make it Jubilee as a whole?
There's Jubilee in government and there's Jubilee in opposition. No, seriously, think about it. BBI, as a report, the biggest opposition comes from ODM.
Within the Jubilee.
Within Jubilee. Look at the fight against corruption. Who has insulted Kinoti the most? Isn't it Murkomen and the like? Jubilee is split, and that split is becoming very, very clear in Kibra. In fact, if I was to give Kibra a moniker, a tagline, if I was writing the headline, I'd say Ruto versus everybody. That's how it looks like, because it's one man and his brigade against everybody. And that's what it's looking like. Now, the question, the thing that makes it sad for me is this is not what Kibra is about. When Ken Okoth was leaving, Kibra was about building schools. It was about infrastructure. It was about making Kibra better. The arguments that we should be hearing is let's match class for class, development for development. But now we are teaching each other lessons. We are embarrassing each other. You know, that's what it's become. And this is the saddest part, that when you introduce national leaders to a local election, you actually make it worse. That is the saddest part, that you've made it about basically a pissing contest between two bigwigs in this country. And the people who will lose are the people of Kibra. And even worse is the candidates that they have chosen. I'm telling you today, if Mariga speaks, I would not recognize his voice because I've not heard him speak. Neither have I heard Imran. In fact, if it should be Imran's picture, I might not recognize the fellow because they're all covered in this Tanga and ODM covering, and they are not coming out as personalities. And to be honest with you, Mariga's motto, as far as I'm concerned, is Sindio, because the speech I've heard is everything Sindio, Vijana, Sindio. You know, and that's all he seems to be able to say. And then you have to ask yourself the question that we are electing someone whose job it is to speak, right? He cannot speak to save his life. You know, I'm sure if he got arrested by police, he cannot talk himself out of that arrest. On top of that, in his 40 years of being alive, he's never voted. He's never voted. Exactly. And that's the person you want to trust with an electoral process. In fact, can he even vote for himself in this election? Technically, he can't. He can't even vote for himself. So you can imagine that that's the kind of leader that we're giving. On top of that, and this is what makes me sick of all, that we have sitting leaders with the power to change the lives of Kibra. And they're essentially telling the people in Kibra that unless you vote for my candidate, I'm not going to build your roads, I'm not going to do your things. That's nonsense. And that's the kind of leadership that we need to kick out of this country. You cannot be a sitting leader and say, oh, now that there's a possibility you could vote for my person, now you'll get roads. Now you'll get basic, decent human amenities. Those are the things that make me sad about this Kibra election. And this is an abuse to the life of Ken Okoth.
I'll bounce to Ben on this particular one as well, even as we look at the political implications of what seems to be this front page right now. Are we looking at a situation from right at the top as far as a party leader in Jubilee is concerned? Has a party leader who is the president of the country given up on his own party? Looked the other way, just wants his term to end and move on. Because once you see key figures in your party, you have governors, you have people you nominated to the House, supporting an opposing candidate, and you say nothing about this, don't call the House to order. Are you done? Have you washed your hands and just want your term to end?
Not at all, not at all. You see, the president, in my view, took time to understand what was working within Jubilee and what was not working. One of the key things you'll agree is that there's one arm of Jubilee that has been extremely toxic, and it is all through and through, where it is politics of intimidation, politics of arrogance, politics of chest thumping, that we versus you, sisi tutafanya, sisi tutatenga, sisi tutaenda, you know, those kinds of things. And at some point, we will agree, it reached whereby the president was almost feeling held hostage within even his own political party. But to a large extent, that would be a problem of his own creation, because they embarked on a mission of driving a car with one engine. But for too long, he let things just flow on their own. And somebody was already fixing another engine in the boot of the car. So now we have a car that has two engines. One's driving this direction, the other one is driving in the opposite direction. Right. And in my view, right now the president, I think, is more, should be more bothered about the actual state of this country. The kind of pettiness we are witnessing, especially around Kibra, is not what the president should be involving himself right now, because we are just talking about an existing economic crisis. We are not talking about something that is to come. I want to imagine that the president wants to concentrate his energies on that. Whether the Jubilee candidate wins, that is Mariga, The president is the Jubilee Party leader. Whether it is the ODM candidate who wins, right now the president is in a working relationship with the ODM leader. So the president doesn't want to begin again to delve into the divisive politics that we witnessed, particularly in 2017. It got so bad, it actually even affected our economy. And I think it has been a prudent decision to stay away. Right. What bothers me is to agree with what Mark has indicated. We have completely lost the plot in terms of what should be presented to the people of Kibra. We are whipping up emotions based on nothing. We have candidates who have not outlined any specific agenda that they have for the people of Kibra. What we are witnessing, and I am on record insisting that this by-election has everything to do with 2022 and nothing to do with the residents of Kibra. So it is a pure contest. Believe you me, a win by the deputy president's candidate is going to really, nasikianga wakisema ongeza volume, it is really going to increase the volume that we are hearing from that quarter. Again, a win from the NASA, the ODM candidate, in my view, would be able to help in a lot of ways in actually toning down the kind of politics, because there's a lot of toxicity that we are currently witnessing on the political landscape. So we have 3 days to go to this election.
Right.
It is going to be very interesting. But from what I gather from the ground, I have no idea how Mariga is going to pull through this one.
Well, we'll wait and see, because on November the 7th, the people of Kibra decide on this particular one, and we'll wait and see how that particular by-election pans out. Last story of the day, even as we wrap up on this one, it's all about day one KCSE. We saw how KCPE started, of course, right across the country. Same tone and tenor as far as day one in KCSE is concerned. The different PSAs, of course, are opening the containers and moving forward with this. Again, I'll come to you with this one. Should we be dealing with this right at the beginning in terms of making sure the integrity is observed right through, and not this thing that we see, this spectacle that you see with cabinet secretaries stopping their functions to go to a different location to open an examination container, Mark?
Well, it's good PR, it's good optics. But for me, and I must declare that I homeschool my children, I do not believe in one exam being the be-all and end-all of someone's life. I cannot wait until KCP and KCSE are things of the past, because essentially this is what we tell our kids. It does not matter how well you performed in class 1 or class 2 or class 3 or class 4 or class 5 or class 6 or class 7. If you get to class 8 and you have a panic attack, or teenagehood is confusing you, or a girl wrote you a letter that confused you just before, you know, you got dumped just before KCSE. A friend of mine once almost failed his exam because his mother died the day before. We should not make it such a high-stakes game. In fact, what we need to do as a matter of urgency is inbuild the kind of dedication and the kind of passion we have for KCSE throughout the learning lives of these children. Because then you've got someone who can perform. Then you've got someone who, if you employ, will not wait for performance review to perform that last week before they're reviewed. We need to inculcate the culture of an expedient, an excellent student right from the beginning, which is why we need to have continuous assessment versus this one big KCSE thing. Secondly, this speaks to the nature of Kenyans. The fact that parents can help their kids steal exams, you must ask yourself the question, what will happen when this child grows up? How corrupt will they be? That's the question. Because the amount of corruption in this country is ridiculous. If you're willing to fake stupidity, because that's what you're doing, because if you have to cheat in an exam, then you're obviously saying that you have intellectual challenges, and you're willing to try and hide that. How will you hide that? Because when you write an application letter, those of us who employ people, and Nerima will bear witness, of those 600 people, you don't need to go to page 2. Just the application letter alone tells you that this person did not attend school, and they were busy chasing people so that they could cheat on the exams. And that's really the tragedy.
Right. Nerima, let me bring in on this. As we look at it right now, should we just wait for CBC to fully come into fruition, and that way we lower the stakes as far as this is concerned? Up until then, we'll experience this year in, year out. Is that what we have right now?
I believe it's a conversation that we need to start having now, not because CBC is going to take a number of years before it's fully ingrained in our young children, but also it needs to be a mentality that we understand as well. I've met young people who the pressure doesn't even come from them themselves. It's their parents who apply this pressure, but also it's the question of where is this pressure coming from and why? And I also wrote it in a column last week where I was talking about how parents also need to understand that they may directly or indirectly put it on their children, where they should be, there's a candidate in your house and you're wondering, why are you not studying?
Right.
You're just sitting here. You're ready for this exam.
Right.
The parent is more nervous about the exam than the candidates themselves, or putting this pressure on what we view as success or the kind of careers that we view as success. But last week, Ndula put a very funny cartoon where he had put CS Matiang'i in an army truck, and actually Ruto coming off of a helicopter telling KCPE students that, or KCSE as well, that everything is going to be fine, but the whole scenario of it can make you have a panic attack.
Right.
So here we are saying everything is going to be fine. In fact, there was an image of the CS, I guess, talking to a candidate, a Class 8 candidate, just before the examination. And I said, there is nothing coming about that. There is nothing. Nothing. I better bring a priest.
Right.
At least to pray for me. Things will be well, my child.
Yes, right next to your desk.
Not the military, not guns, not high-level politicians who you only see on TV. I mean, there's nothing that will make me calm about that to do an examination. So we're doing something. Our actions are completely different from the words that are coming out of our mouths.
Okay, Ben, even as we wind up, what's your take on this particular one? How do we solve this once and for all? Because it almost seems like as long as we'll have KCSE and KCP as they are, it's just, as they say, it is what it is. Until
for me,
CBC
at
comes
least
in,
the advantage we have is that we have those stories on the headlines of the newspapers. On the one hand, there is that pressure on candidates to perform and excel and score. But on the other hand, we have evidence of what this concept of grades makes human beings. We have just talked about Rotich being an A student, Harvard, and all those funny things. Yet he lacked, and there are millions of Kenyans who have gone through the same education system, who lack ethics, who lack basic morals, who have no qualms at all cheating or lying or even stealing, those things. That is the result of an academic system or an education system that emphasizes on grades rather than character building, rather than competence building. Because if we had an education system that does that, we would be a long way to go. I have no qualms at all with the CBC as it is structured. Unfortunately, it was disastrously introduced. People, especially teachers who are critical stakeholders, are grappling to catch up with what they are supposed to be doing. I don't understand what the crisis or what the emergency was, but let's see how it goes. But in the meantime, until we devalue the issue of grades, whereby now we can begin to critically assess individuals, and the rest of the world is already doing that, whereby today even corporations like Microsoft, like Apple, and many others globally are now recruiting from pools of people who have demonstrated other competencies far away from education, because it is evident education has got no correlation with the capacity to perform.
Okay, yes. That particular point,
and that is one thing that we really must begin to
look in our education system.
Yes, yes.
Okay, of course, as far as the newspaper review is concerned, that's where we'll draw the curtains as far as this is concerned. But also, we wish all the candidates sitting for the examinations this week, and of course throughout the month up until November the 27th, all the best as they sit for their examinations. That's where we draw the curtains on our newspaper review this morning. Mr. Ben Mulwa, Nerima Wako, Mark Bitachi, thank you so much for making time this morning. Ben, please do the necessary. Hand over the alarm clock to Mr. Mark. For next week, we take a short break. We are back with Interactive.
Absolutely. I'm doing that right.